Welcome to this very exciting Square-based show episode in which Val Heffelfinger talks about his journey around the world to play the old world, while I talk about being a TO at the UK's first international grand tournament.
Boy, howdy, was it international?
Oh, yeah.
Right off the hop. Shout out Nathan.
Shout out Nathan, who travelled from Perth, which to be fair, you want to leave Perth.
Yeah, where's the closest place I can get to? London, apparently? Wow, that was awesome. Hugo.
From Spain.
Hugo rolled from España, the developer and incredibly tall, handsome lad of Warhol.
He annoyed me. I'm not going to lie. It
was frustrating.
Me. Yeah, he's like, hello, I do Warhol. And I was like, you're so beautiful. And then he just kept being charming and funny and insightful and thoughtful. And I was like, this is annoying.
And had an 8-foot wingspan. Like, if there was ever a jar of cookies you wanted, no matter the shelf, that guy's got it. All right, he's just going to fucking effortlessly just reach up, grab him.
Yeah. He's a superstar. So we had, people from all over the country at this weekend's Square-based GT, which Mr. Val Heffelfinger, obviously it was held in Nottingham in the UK. Val Heffelfinger travelled over from Canada to be a part of it, while in addition taking a road stop at some very well-known Bat Rep studios. And so we've got a pretty interesting story today, where, like, obviously we're really excited in the next few days, week, to be doing the Orcs Goblin release, which came out at the same time. You can't plan these things, but there it is. Very exciting. Some top of the high level thoughts. Having looked at it, I think both the two builds, the Troll Herd and also the ambushing pigs, are crazy good. I think they're exciting.
It's fun. They're both the Orcs and Goblins Arcane Journal just fills me with such hope for future Arcane Journals because they're both really fun. Troll Horde, we'll see. I got to play it actually on the aforementioned YouTube Battle Report channel, Tabletop Tactics. We'll see. Hopefully it winds up. They have a model where they sort of do a couple on YouTube, but they have their on-demand channel, which is their paywalled content. Obviously for the good of the show, we're hoping that I maintain my position in the release lineup. I don't get bumped by like 40K or some bullshit. And we're gonna be superstars, man. That is our moment. We'll own it. I did not mom spaghetti all over myself. It's great. I feel like it would add to Tabletop Tactics lore. I can't hype it enough. The Troll Horde versus the Dwarves is an excellent game. And then if you want to see me bumble my way through a Vampire Counts versus Orcs and Goblins game, you can pay them a couple bucks.
Yeah, well, that's available.
That's live now. That's live now. If you want to see,
that's live now.
Jet-lagged Val panicked about charging his rental electric car, try and play Warhammer. Then you can pay a few quid.
All right. Well, so we got lots of deep diving along that. So Orcs and Goblins just come out, which is very exciting.
Yep.
We're not long away from Dwarfs. We think maybe we're going to get the announcement in the next week. Maybe this weekend we're going to see that. Could well do. We're not sure. Which is very exciting because I don't know. As we said when we talked about this a few weeks ago, they've said that the scope of the project has expanded. That doesn't mean we don't know if it hasn't also accelerated.
The scope of the project has changed.
So there's some real opportunities to talk about some really fun stuff. And of course, we have, I think, maybe more than the only other person in the world. Obviously, there's been one-day events around the world, but a little 2-day GT with a lot of a little 2-day with, quite a large 2-day, 24 people, with a load of experience. I think I walked away from this weekend with just a head full of thoughts about the old world, a bunch of interactions that I saw, and some other stuff. So we're going to talk about that today, but also Val's experiences in traveling. So if you want to sign up for all of that, ask us any questions, do hit us up in our Patreon. We've got a big active Discord of people talking about all these things. Pretty lively.
Hell yeah, we do.
Pretty lively.
I should probably pop back in. I neglected our brothers and sisters in Patreon Discord chat for the entire week I was there. So I apologize.
Being a podcast brother of yours, and as you're at the table, me shouting, "Have you taken any photos?" And you're like, "No photos, no."
At Tabletop Tactics, which would have been rife for like cool, like even just fanboying there because I've loved them forever. I took, I think I managed to get one selfie. Terrible angle, way too low. I've got like 17 chins. I maybe took a photo of 3 things in the cabinets, and then I just left. Completely failed at being a content creator. Also, I don't know, like when I was out and about, I was thinking about this. Like when you see like a piece of content and someone's like, in public doing a piece of content, you have to have like less shame, and like I felt embarrassed every time I was like, I'll just take a risk, and so I have to get over that.
You do.
Like if I'm out in public,
You do.
Like,
I was
like,
even.
you just,
I did interviews this weekend. Sorry, not to cut you off, but again, cockshy.
please do.
Cockshy. I literally. I publicly exclaimed it on the Saturday. I was like, "Listen, I need to start interviewing you guys. I'm really shy about this." And they're like, "It's your event and your venue, and you make videos."
And you're friends with everyone there.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm still shy.
Yeah.
So it takes a minute to get over that. I think for some people, which is cool.
I think it's easy for me. It was on reflecting on it. It's easier when I am like actually alone and like because I've soloed. People are like, man, I went to the movies alone the other day, or like I went to a restaurant and ate alone. Like I've gone to GTs alone, so like I feel like that's even more intense. And there, I find that better. Like I usually will do a lot of like Facebook updates and things like that because I'm trying to include people I know, like get that little social feel. But here, because I was always with just great friends and wonderful people, I felt it was almost like rude. So anyway, I got to get over that someday.
Okay. Oh, listen. I mean, that happens.
Little
right?
insight, guys. Little insight to how the sausage is made.
Well, let's start chronologically, which I think is the right thing. And listen, if you got any thoughts, if you guys got any thoughts about what you want to see from the channel in the future, comments are always below. YouTube thugs, shout out to you. I hope you're doing really well.
Hey guys.
And also all the podcasters. So, brother, started out. You're going to travel over to the UK to play at a GT. Obviously, you played Orcs and Goblins, but what made you want to bring Orcs and Goblins over? Like, what was your thoughts? You knew you were playing on Tabletop Tactics. You're going to play at a GT. Where was your head at past few weeks leading up to the event?
Well, I guess like going back to my mental crisis of like, oh, what do I play? I'm so overwhelmed. Back in like January, I think the thing that settled me the most was just picking a faction and committing to it. Also, conveniently, I have a ton of Orcs and Goblins, so I'm able to field a lot of different things. And then I think through my games on Warhol and the RTT I played here, so the one-day event that I played here, almost won. I was honing a list for the first time, I think, ever in my Warhammer life, where I like
iterating.
I think well, like not iterated like the fundamentals early on, but I'd say for the past 3 weeks the list has been pretty much locked in. The only thing that changed was that I dropped my BSB for for a couple items and things, and to stop giving up 100 points whenever that little punk of a goblin got killed. So yeah, like I think I've got, it sounds crazy to say this out loud, but I feel like I've got around 30 games in with the specific Black Orcs and Night Goblins list that I have, which is nuts. I've like 40. I played a ton of 40K. There has never been a time where I've played a list that many times. Maybe a couple practice games before a GT, and then whatever the GT was, and then the next time out it'd be a little bit different. So that's been really, really cool, getting to know it and how it deals with certain situations. The actual experience at the GT, because this was cool. Like a lot of gamers came out to play. So I think the lists and the way that particular square-based GT2 meta like presented itself, I think was some really good stabs at like what like the key meta choices are, and we can get into that later. But anyway, Orcs and Goblins were the pick, and then once Troll Horde was rumored, I was unable to actually see the rules because obviously we're not hooked up. But Lawrence, even though I was, I guess, somewhat of a collaborator there, and so he would have been within his rights to share the information with me. He didn't.
Oh, he's such a good lad.
He's such a good boy. So actually, I got the rules when I got there. But Pete, in
reference, sorry, just in case people aren't sure, obviously content creators and some other people get early access to the upcoming rules. But obviously we don't, because Squarebase is a subsidiary of the Honest Wargaming podcast. We don't accept any sponsorship or endorsements. Therefore we would never be hooked up. And in fact, have turned down being hooked up, as they say.
Yes. Also, yeah, I think, just as an aside, I think it's important for if we do get to maintain our perch as, I don't know, listen to voices and things that people enjoy and hear talking about this game. I think it's good to have truly independent voices out there. Like aside from anything, like my experience in 40K was once everyone was tied to the ship, and also getting the free stuff, which is oddly corrosive, then maybe there's a little bit more held back from honesty. Although so anyway, I do like the fact that we get to be independent voices, and I would turn it down if we had the option. And there's lots of people out there who are going to give you those early hot takes, and hopefully we can give you cooler takes a little bit later. But all that being said, I didn't know why, but another friend of ours, Pete, gave me a list to take. Again, I had no rules, no idea, no context. So I was carrying the Troll Horde with me, and I was carrying Orcs and Goblins. It was 2 pieces of hard luggage. Hilariously, like the least amount of gear I had was in my duffel bag for my clothes, which often happens when you go to a Warhammer event or stream things. So I was off to the races with Orcs and Goblins and Trolls.
Fun. While you were doing that, I was furiously prepping the venue for the event. Trees, hills, terrain. Some of you may have listened to. So we ended up at the event with two identical hills, 2 identical forests, and then not identical but same sized pieces of like building terrain on each board across the venue, which I thought was quite good. I thought that was it was uniform, but while it was uniform, we did different stuff. Like we put different like flocking on stuff and changed the coloring around a little bit, so it's slightly different. So first of all, the physical representation, very good, because I know how much. Well, I have an idea of how much effort had to have gone in to get all of those tables ready with the trees and the hills, and then on top of some of the really nice stuff you've already created for the arena in the past. But the thing that really pulled it all together was, and I highly recommend, because I hadn't engaged with it in all full honesty until I was there, but the actual table setups for each mission. Rob has created a sort of a card pack with 3 different options for each map style. So like, the long edge or the short edge or the diagonal, whatever they all are called in Warhammer Old World. And essentially the way it works is there's 3 options. Maybe the hills are out of the deployment zones on one, and another one, maybe they're in the deployment zone, or maybe, the forests are in the center. If you're up against wood elves, you probably don't want that. And essentially there's a roll off, and one player discards one of the 3 options, and then the other player picks from the remaining 2. And then you set up in about 2 seconds and you're off to the races. And it was really good. I really, really enjoyed that. It provided, and I'm sure that even if you just picked at random and didn't try and think sneaky tactically for which was the best option, you'd still wind up with a table that wasn't, completely compromised, like you might say if it was fully player placed. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed the system. I'd be very happy to hear feedback from other players and what they thought about the different setups. Me too.
Because they felt very functional to me, and it was a great aspect. And every game felt great. I'll be using those in my own personal games, and it should be known, those terrain setups are built into Warhol now. So when you go to deploy in Warhol, you actually have when you're deploying any of their preset terrain, it's actually Rob's terrain design, like layouts that are there, so you can actually do that mini game when you're playing online, and you can test it out and give feedback there too. But they're great.
That's fun. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, thanks for that. I wasn't really sure. We put sort of like some work into it, but I did not in the briefing let people know. I was like, uh-oh. So I had to go around every table, and then they were like, oh, nice. Okay, so and all those things, by the way, completely free. TheHonestWargamer.com. Click the Old World tab on there. It's all free. You can just like download it, but it's also like we created the bleed and the edges that you would need if you wanted to get it professionally printed. So you can just have them printed for yourselves at home.
Great little piece of it was a great little thing for Rob's goodie bags. We got like a little line of arc widget, and we also got those cards, and those cards will come in super handy. Yeah,
more than the widget, I think. I don't think I saw anyone use the widget for the entire weekend, but I don't know how to make lasers yet. But soon, I'm going to make lasers.
I use the small one. The big one's fucking over the top, but I use the little guy a lot, and we need to get some branded square-based fucking line lasers.
Yeah, we do the lasers.
You know I don't have one after Square Base 1. I don't. Yeah, I managed to fucking give them all away, and I wound up with none.
Well, the other thing to say is that I saw another great little piece of tech that Hugo had where he would mark where his trays are. It's really hard to explain, but something else I'm going to start producing as well, because I'm going to stick them in goodie bags, because they're very simple little squares. Basically, where the edge of your tray was, he had like a thin and thick square. So he would be like, that's where my tray is. And then when he wanted to make any maneuvers or stuff, like he would discuss with his opponent, and then he could place it back to where it was previously, which I thought was really, really right. I didn't see anyone else with it over the weekend, which is fun.
So like in chatting with Hugo, we got a little insight into his Warhammer life, and he went really super hard into Ninth Age, sort of at the ETC competitive level. And it actually triggered me to think that much like how we've evolved a lot of techniques to playing 40K and AOS over the last like intense 8 years of competition, it might be really great to start looking at like how do the Ninth Age players solve for fairness? You know what I mean? And that might be a standard technique that they use, that they mark their trays before they move, so that way there's no disputes about where something was if you want to, adjust things or something like that. So there might be other hacks like that help make, playing with strangers a little smoother. So
all right,
a wealth of knowledge to be had from the Ninth Age crowd.
Yeah, and we're going to keep talking about the event even more. I really appreciate your thoughts, and thank you to the Baron in the chat, who clearly was at the event as well and said that they had a good time, which I very, very much appreciate. It's really rewarding, but like I mainly want to hear the criticisms. Does that make sense? Because I'm like, because you want to be like, right, okay, but what was wrong? Just tell me. Like, what can I do? Like, you
low
want to
flow
get
toilets.
Low flow toilets.
Completely unprepared for North Americans. That's all I could say.
All right. So Monday you arrive and you go and play a battle report on Tabletop Tactics. Now, a question from me to you, and if you don't know, Tabletop Tactics are a YouTube channel where they make battle reports for Old World as well as other stuff, and also they have a pay-per-view section as well. They're super nice people. My question is, have you done battle reports before? This was your first time to do like a battle report in a professional studio, because probably they're the most professional outfit out there, though. Them and Play on Tabletop are pretty much it, I'd say.
Yeah. The emergence of Play On, I think, really was a shot across the bow of Tabletop Tactics, because at that time they were, I would say, a higher production level than say anyone else out there mini wargaming. But then you get the sort of television/studio tier production that you get with Play On, and that, I think, that's to their credit, like they responded to that, and so they have really, really high production quality on their stuff. The answer on have I ever played in a battle report? Yes. Years ago, I played on a couple with a friend of mine who was also my commission painter, Adam Truax. I think he's a bit out of the game now, but he had a battle report channel, and so I played a few 40K battle reports. But those were more your traditional handycam reports. Whereas when at Tabletop Tactics, I mean, they're running, you're in a studio environment, you're mic'd up, you have someone who's the camera person and producer, in addition to the player across from you, who also would fill that role at times. And so you're doing things in a way that, so that you have to pause for them to shoot B-roll of everything. You mostly are measuring off camera. Actually, coming back to them, because I hadn't really watched or engaged with them as much as I had in the past for a very long time. So going back and watching, I was like, what the fuck? They don't measure? Like, they're just moving? But they're measuring off camera, so they took that off for aesthetic purposes. So it's a very slow process, in addition to being bedraggled as I was on the first day. But both bat reps were somewhere between 6 to 8 hours to produce.
Wow.
Then that got
film,
edited.
Not to edit.
Just to film. The edit. Katie edited our Vampire Counts versus Orcs and Goblins. I think she did it in a day, maybe 2 days, because we recorded that Monday. I don't know if she worked on it on Tuesday and Wednesday, but it was out by Friday, I want to say. So like they can turn around the edit pretty fast. But really, it's a very, if you're interested in content production, it's amazing to think of like how professionalized they've gotten with their pipeline of content, with how they allocate their resources, how they share both being on camera and the edits. All of them are editors. So it was really, really cool to be able to see them working. And also, really, really cool. I think this is important to point out is that they are themselves. Like none of them play a particular character on screen. Obviously, they have a presentational style, but none of it is far from the real character of them. So like they were great people to be stuck in a room for 6 to 8 hours with. So that was good.
Unlike me, my presentational style is actually incredibly dour. To shout out to Hugo. But then
we all know that that you're doing a bit, Rob.
Okay, so do you want to talk about your games, or like you just want to say, obviously you can go watch them. So not really sure what to put in there, but like how were they?
Well, I want to maybe I'll talk a little philosophically for a second, because one of the reasons why I've gotten to know Lawrence over the years is that I've been with him not quite his full journey, but like very, very close. I would have probably started watching Tabletop Tactics, Battle Reports, just slightly after he got out of his kitchen and into his spare bedroom at his flat in London. And that was a handy cam on a white background, and with him only working the camera. And they were also, I'd say, a lot more game focused. I think actually both you and I have gone on a similar journey to Lawrence, which is, trying hard to create content that is both, entertaining, but also was at the time, it's called Tabletop Tactics because I think his assumption was a heavy focus on the game. I think the reality of the audience is, and I think this is something that I really want to someday delve into and maybe a little video essay. The reality of the audience is that the game itself and being good at the game and trying hard at the game is a little bit taboo. And the broader your audience is, the less likely they are to react to being particularly, play to win. And the argument I tend to have with Lawrence is whether or not you can have entertaining play to win games. I think you absolutely can. But in reality, Tabletop Tactics for, the time when I was really, really consuming it, I like to think of them as playing the game at about 80%. They were always making decisions in how they made their lists and how they played the game that were restrained. Both, I think, to try and get better stories on the table and to also not offend people with their power gaming instincts. And that's true. It's literally
I think about musicians. It's like when I hear like a sonnet played really well, or like, a piano recital, I think those fucking try-hard pianists. Yeah, like,
right?
That's what I think. I think, how dare you?
Can you like miss a note every now and again?
Yeah.
But that's an interest. Like I said, I think that's a great we've had you and I personally have had hours of conversation about this very topic.
Yeah.
Lawrence and I have had lots of chats about it. We've seen it in firsthand in trying to produce good streamed content of the best skilled games and not necessarily landing that in front of a massive audience, sometimes being criticized for it. So we'll park that. The reason I made this preamble is mostly just because when you're going into Tabletop Tactics, it's different than going to the event that I was also playing on the Sunday. So I made two lists that were compromised, made more fun choices. I tried to make them in the spirit of the arena I was going into. So my Orc and Goblin list, for example, I took out the Black Orcs. I kept in 2 units of Fanatics, 2 units with Fanatics, but I didn't add a third, which I could have. I put in a big spider because Lawrence's nickname is the Spider, so I had Lawrence the Spider. Mm-hmm. And I brought 2 units of 10 Squig Hoppers, which weren't bad. I have to say, having 2 big fat units of Squig Hoppers was actually not as awful as I thought it would be. So that was actually really cool. Learning, and also it was an opportunity to try things that I in my head was like, that might be good. I think Secret Tech in the Orc and Goblin book is legitimately snotling bases as move blockers and chaff. I think they are super overlooked right now from a utility piece perspective. They do probably what I like. Yeah, I think they're excellent. They're just a bit expensive. They're like 70 points a base, but for like a chaff redirector, I think they're really, really, really good. And I learned that because I was trying not to bring the most optimal list. And then the unfortunate thing was I played it very much not very optimally because I was quite disheveled. And not to blame anything, but I was, learning the ropes on the fly. I'm really actually kind of happy that this is the one that they hid behind the paywall the comments have been very forgiving. But yeah, so it was tough to it was definitely a tough way to play, and I think the second game was better. But that all being said, we also worked really hard to collaborate behind the scenes to try and make sure that both of us were playing a sound game. And by that I mean like we weren't driven by and this isn't like my general's going to fight your general type things. I think we were more trying to find what were the best moves that we could make in the given situations that were presented, and talking through sort of ideal moves as we went. And I love everything short of a tournament game. I love playing Warhammer that way. I find it really, really useful for both sides to play fully collaboratively and talk out why or why not to do stuff as you're going. I find it's a way to accelerate your learning, and it's a way to get a better game because you don't make necessarily catastrophic mistakes. And so like I found that to be really, really refreshing. It was a great first couple of games to play that way.
Lovely. And would you say that like it was indicative of a game that would you say the experiences were different to what you saw at the weekend? Like as in the on tabletop experience different, like that's what I'm trying to get at. How would you compare them? That's a great question.
How would I compare them? Well, obviously if you have to like pause every time you move a model so camera can come in and shoot it, and if you have to pause for B-roll before you fight every combat, and you have to break for lunch, it's much more disjointed. But I think what stood out to me across all of my games that I've had, again, an alarming amount of games that I've been able to play in the last 2 months, is that the game holds up. Like there's a lot of stuff in the margins that are sort of awkward and need to be figured out on the fly. But as of right now, you can get through a game even with some of those glaring unanswered questions very easily and with a lot of entertainment. I found that there was a lot of amazing moments in the games on Tabletop Tactics that were driven by a lot of these sort of, some might say, deeper rules, or like the additional rules that you have, because you get more fidelity. More things happen in a game of Old World than they do in games of 40K and AOS right now, just because there are more rules to happen. You know what I mean? Less of it is on the player to imagine happening. More of it is actually driven by mechanics on the table. And so that has made for some really dramatic situations and really cool rolls of the dice and wild shit happening. And that, I think, would be my takeaway. It is a very satisfying game to play. And this is the way I felt about 8th edition fantasy too. When you're done playing a game, like for example, I played a 7-hour marathon of a game on Wednesday or whatever. Tuesday. Yeah. Against a fellow who was equally interested in trying to figure out, the right way to play each situation, each rule, interaction, and stuff. So we were kind of going through that game at a very slow pace and with a fine-tooth comb kind of thing. And that was awesome in its own way. But I think you can also play it in the 3-hour round that we did. So the game runs really well, and it's very satisfying, and I'm tremendously pleased.
Great. Love that. Okay, good. Well, so having left Tabletop Tactics, made your way over to the TSN Arena, which is my venue that we have here in Nottingham. We have 12 tables, so we have room for 24 players. And thankfully, because we built it just before 40K and Age of Sigmar became smaller games, they're all good old 6x4 foot boards. Or tables is probably better than.
Oh yeah, we were also playing on the small boards on Tabletop Tactics.
Oh really?
Yeah, Lawrence had promised me he'd bring out his tabletopper, and that was a lie. That was a lie.
Tabletop liars. Well, yeah. So we got the big old tables here, and you turned up. We did a couple of days of hanging out. We went and visited Warhammer World. There's the new there's the new Old World display, which is fun. You seem to enjoy that. Tomb Kings versus Bretts.
Yeah, that was fun. The thing I liked most about it were the bone dragons sort of zipping around in the sky, because I think they get a lot of shit for looking like. I actually noticed one of the guys from Triple Crown Wargame that I played against. He modeled his bone dragon without their little bone wings, and it looked cool in flight because the wings were spread out and stuff. So that was great. Warhammer World's a blast, especially when the Artful Dodger of Nottingham is guiding you around, fucking winking and gunning and butt slapping his way through that place. It's awesome. There's a lot of love, and I got to meet a lot of the really, really fine people who are working, manning the trenches of GW, weathering the slings and arrow of frontline retail work. But just some really great folks there. That was great to see. And then just, if you haven't had a chance to do it, like when you walk through the museum, it's all of the stuff that you've seen in print and photos and stuff. It's kind of, as you mentioned to me, it's kind of like their storage shelves is really the presentation hall. So like there's just tons of classic minis and, the new stuff. There's lots of stuff I'd never seen before just because, I'm not on top of my AOS ranges or, and a lot of the dioramas have a lot of the old models. I was a little sad that they kind of curate it so that actually they don't it is curated to only be current production stuff, which is kind of fucked up for a museum. Like I would have loved to see all the old Forge World models. I would have loved to see, maybe they dust off the old fantasy ranges. There's
one section in the museum which is legitimately because I don't think they know where to store them, where they've got like the big Forge World like Eldar flyer and like the Tau, the Tau giant ship,
the Manta,
the Manta, which I think isn't in production anymore.
No, I think that one actually is.
Okay,
they probably just have a bunch of them that they actually. That's not true because I do know people who've bought the Manta. And you have to wait for them to make it. But in that cabinet, it's funny that you mentioned it. In that particular cabinet is a lot of the Forge World flyers, also the Eldar Titans. The Reaver Titan was in there. But it was the only example I saw where both the old and the new were present. So the old Tiger Shark from Forge World, which is a resin flyer for 40K, was there next to the new Tiger Shark. And that was the only situation I could think of where that was the case.
I honestly think it's just because they've got nowhere to store it. Legit,
right?
Like it's which is really fun. Yeah, I would say the tour, the museum. It's called a tour, isn't it? Right? But like it's such a good time. So many great minis. Such a great time to walk around with people and look at the stuff and have chats about what people's favorite stuff is.
Yeah, and at one point, like I turned to you and the person who was with us, and I was like, you guys have been through this like 1,000 times. Aren't you bored? And both of them sheepishly were like, we just love Warhammer so much. And it's true. Like if you could just go wander through that place, I could see how you would. It's not like Madame Tussauds. Like if it's something you're into, it's well worth spending a good amount of time just going through and fanboy is a great place to like unironically fanboy and or girl about all the cool little fucking toys, and it's really great. And the jobs that they do with the dioramas are astounding. I take them a bit for granted because I've seen them before. But if it's the first time you've gotten to see their sort of very large diorama pieces, they're awesome. Like I remember like growing up, like what did we have? There was like a Bretonian joust diorama that was in White Dwarf, and there was the Horus Kills the Emperor diorama, and both of those just like melted my brain with how cool they were. And they're there and they're like this big, and then next to them are sort of what they do in modern era, which is really fun. And then another thing that I loved, I'd actually doubled back on the Good Friday to Warhammer World, and they were actually open even though it was a bank holiday. What do you call it?
Bank holiday.
I doubled back and I had a wonderful lunch with Stu from Miniature Realms, who's been an outspoken supporter of our channel for since we started. Shout out to Stu and Jordan's Sorcery, both of whom visited the tournament, but they were hanging out there. And when I went to go visit them, there were probably 2 or 3 full rows in the gaming hall, which was packed. I actually had to park in the overflow parking for Warhammer World. It was jumping. And there were 2 or 3 rows of Old World being played there, and a lot of unpainted armies and stuff. But people were out playing Old World. I mean, definitely overwhelmed by AOS and 40K for sure, but like still a substantial amount of people playing the game on Good Friday, which was cool to see. And Jordan and Stu were playing Dark Future. which is a throwback game. And I was telling Rob about this. As I arrived, they're like, hold on. We just gotta do one last thing, and then we'll go get some lunch. Okay, let's see. We're gonna go to the emergency swerve table 5, and then we're gonna go to the rumble strip table 6. We're gonna go to the e-brake table 7. Like literally 4 charts. And then Jordan reached out from where he was sitting, and he was just like, eek! Like just moved the car 2 millimeters. It was incredible. And I thought it was a great example of like when they're thinking about like our games are too complicated. I think they still are thinking like that you're doing that, like
you're still playing
through
Dark
and
Future.
You're still playing Dark Future, and I think that's why they've maybe overtuned, 40K and soon to be AOS a bit to like remove stuff.
It reminds me of some of the situations because I got asked like way more questions than I normally get, like an Age of Sigmar event, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But it made me laugh. I would get to a situation and they would have a block or something in the middle, and it'd been charged by 2 units, and another unit was fleeing near it, and another unit was behind it, and they would look at me. They're like, "Right, Rob, I'm falling back in good order." And I like look at both. I'm like, you signed up for this. This is you. You could have just done lines and charged them straight at each other. Yeah, this is your fault, not my fault. Anyway, that made me laugh because those were complex.
And I think Rob is tuned in, keyed on this. But I think in general, if you're listening to this, watching this, and you're like, what do I need? I think a lot of Old World works quite well without much reference until you're in a situation when you're resolving a combat with multiple units around, and someone's falling back or someone's been pushed back, because everything is. And I think you wanted to make sort of a decision chart. If this, then that. I think that would be very, very helpful.
We're halfway through that.
Yes. Rob cut me off. We were working on it on Friday or Thursday night, and my eyes were shut. I was doing that so I could see in my mind's eye the situations we were talking about. But Rob read that as I was asleep and talking to him from another place.
Yeah, that's why you slept till 11 the next day. You were contemplating the rules, I assume.
That's right. I was like a slan working on my next spell. So anyway, yeah, I'd say if there's an area to like just get nerdy, open your book and like reread and read. And like take time with too when you're at the table and maybe you're in your first couple of games. Get those ones right and try and find ways to commit it to memory, because that is the one that slows the game down the most.
I legitimately want to make a flowchart and want to make a video about that. I think that is.
I think it's very important,
especially post FAQ, which we think might be this week. So like fingers crossed. But post FAQ, I would like to just generate all those resources together and make a video on that. And I think that will help a lot of people out. And then have some sort of cheat sheet. Legitimately, I'm just talking about the phase where you've rolled after whatever the combat resolution is. You've got basically 3 things happen: units wiped out, a unit gives ground, unit falls back in good order, and each one of those 3 has very complex. I say decision trees, but more consequence trees. Some of them are decision points, some of them are like consequences. So got to go through that. That was the one bit that I think like a lot of people kind of stumbled over, or over the weekend they were just like, yeah, that'll do. Like there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that. I think that's really beneficial. But I think in the future, especially if you get some forceful personalities, like no. Because I think
it works like this.
Yeah, this weekend I think was very collaborative, but I think in the future you will get people who are like, no, I know, and I had a conversation like that over the weekend where I got asked a rule, and then I said, listen, my opinion is this is the way it works, and then one of the guys I was talking to was like, no, I don't agree that it works that way. It's like, and do you know what? That is just as valid as my opinion right now. Like, even though I'm the TO, and you're the player, but I didn't say, but I'm the TO. I was just like, I'm going to make this decision now, but I want you to be clear. I'm not trying to say that I think I'm righter than you are. I'm just, someone has to make a decision in these situations. And then in the future, hopefully we'll get a really good resolution on this. And that seemed to work really well, because I definitely didn't want to come down like, I know everything all the time and I'm right, because that's just simply not true. The game's too complex, especially in that minutia.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is right now, because the stakes are fairly low. Like, obviously, and what I loved about the event, when we get to it, is that people came to play. Like, they came to do their best to win. Like there were some harder lists and not as hard lists out there for sure. But no one was like fucking soft boiling their lists. Everyone brought stuff that was good.
Oh yeah,
which was great. I love to see that. What was also cool, and I guess this is where a lot of the sort of Raw versus Ray crowd is going to get like, well, why can't you always just figure it out? And that would be probably what the design team would like us to do too. And the reason is because people eventually will start to care about whether or not they win or lose. And in those situations, you're going to have both people who are understandably motivated to like be right and, married to a position because of the outcome it gets them. And what needs to exist when we get to that level is a right answer. A right answer that can be referenced and determined, that is beyond just the whim of, whatever TO is running it or the force of the personality who is saying that this is how it works. So you need to have that because we want games of Old World to have consequence for people who do try hard and give up their weekends and go out to play to hopefully win a GT or win a major in the future. We want them to be able to say that they won because they won, not because a rule was ruled in a certain way or because they're a fucking tremendous asshole.
Well, so my TLDR from the weekends, my TLDR having watched what was it, a lot of games, 24 people playing over the course of 5 rounds, whatever that ends up being numbers wise, was this game is so swingy. It is unbelievable. And I don't mean that as a negative. I really don't. I mean that as a forceful positive. What I liked and what I've said I already liked, and if you go back and listen to the top 5 things I liked, I said one of the things I really love is that the rules are expressive of a narrative, which is what a war game should be. We're not playing with tokens. We're playing with a goblin who's sneaky and wants to stab you in the face. And there should be rules that are indicative of that. Like, when Val would roll a double and his fanatic would kill himself, like that's hilarious because that is what they do, right? That's the kind of point of them. And therefore that swinginess is actually and people have said this in many different ways before, but dice do tell stories. Oh yeah. Situations on the tabletop tell stories. And, and I keep quoting bravery as my leadership, is my favorite thing. Leadership 10 with a reroll is a very unlikely and improbable failure point in your army list, but it is not an impossible failure point in your army list, right? Yeah. And that's what I mean by swinginess. Some of the other games that exist out there have had that kind of RNG removed, like for a more solo play. Like you would be playing 40k and someone would be like, I've got 30 shots, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. I'm like, just don't roll them. Just like you can have 29 hits. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't want to watch you do it. Where in this, someone's like, okay, I've got Chaos Lord. He's got the most hard-ass weapon in the world. 5 attacks. Okay, 3s. Yeah. Oh, missed twice. Like, or I've got 18 killing blow attacks. And you're like, okay, no 6s. And I would consistently, and you've got a great story about this, which I'd love you to share in a moment. But that was my TLDR from the weekend. Also, why over the next few months I would take tournament results and event results and game results with a pinch of salt, because the game also, I think, snowballs a lot on those dice rolls. So and then even later on there are still some get outs where there are still loads of good options for a player to get out, and sometimes they get it and then it swings the other way. I watched a game that turn 6 was just a 900-point swing, and I was like, okay, that's pretty significant, and then I watched other games where it came down to like, do I just need a single 6 on like 3 dice? So close, which is brilliant. Yeah. So I would say the game is in a stunning place that I'm going to table flip a lot, and then I'll be like, fuck, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, I hate this. I will see you tomorrow. So that's kind of my. Do you have a TLDR on kind of the game experience in that way? You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you talk a lot about skill expression, right? And I one thing that Warhammer often gets called is like it's a game of luck. It's lucky if you get the 6. It's lucky if blah blah blah. And I think what I saw evolve in 40K was that really what Warhammer comes down to is a game of risk management. So what are you risking to achieve your goals? Right now, it's super hard to evaluate risk because you don't know how everything works necessarily. You don't know exactly. Like Hugo had a situation where he had a fork in the road. He could charge one of the two high elf dragons he was confronted with. One of them was the lord with the sword and shit, and the other one was a caster who had illusion and doppelganger and the monster slaying sword, which is not a great matchup for a dragon. That's exactly that guy wants to be fighting your dragon, and he didn't realize conveyance spells worked in both turns. Actually, I heard this a couple times. Assailment spells. Sorry, thank you. Didn't realize that assailment spells, so the close combat spells for wizards, worked in both turns. So he thought he was safe because it was his turn. He thought he had a chance to kill that dragon and then go on. That guy then fucking nuked his dragon and he lost. He went on to 20-0 and scored the most amount of kill points in the tournament.
Savage
in the subsequent. Just gross. Like Hugo absolutely dummied the field, except for he didn't know, he wasn't able to evaluate the risk in that situation just because of ignorance. Like he didn't know yet. He knows now. And actually that same scenario happened against one of the players, Darren. And again, he didn't realize that that assailment happened in both sides of the turn. However, in 2 rounds of combat against that, buckets of dice being rolled against him, and because he's some sort of a woodland fairy, he was able to tiptoe his way through the razor blades, and no 6s came up. So his dragon survived, and he was able to prevail. But like those moments of like whether or not that 6 comes up, human beings love love dice.
Yes, love
that.
Like
the emotional roller coaster of a variability of outcomes when you're not people say competitive gamers really want a game that just sort of happens, like it's more like chess, or people talk about diplomacy in the board game world. There's no dice in diplomacy on purpose to remove RNG. The RNG is the behavior of your opponent, and that should be what dictates who wins or loses, what moves are made. But the RNG, if viewed from the risk perspective, which is in the future, knowing full well that you are about to charge a guy who could monster slay you on a 6, but evaluating the field and realizing this is the play I have. I've got to take this. I got to take this gambit, and charging in there fully aware of the odds stacked against you, and then just praying to God the 6 doesn't come up, or hoping you kill it first. That just gives such stakes to so many dice rolls and just heightens so many moments. And I would say, to Old World's credit, they've removed a lot of the catastrophic, like you want to talk about swingy, whether or not a purple sun goes off with perfect convocation in 8th edition, which could then just pick up literally an army if it was placed correctly. That doesn't exist anymore, right? So you have very consequential dice rolls with a more limited, impact, so that there still is more play. But I would say there were some heartbreaking RNG that I suffered personally.
There was some heartbreaking RNG across the event. Our Empire player with 3 level 4 wizards miscast his first spell, and then made it so he could cast no more spells that phase. So he's just he's just sat looking at 11 more spells to cast, not that phase, that turn, and he's like, well, just fuck me, right? Like like I say, I've seen 900-point swings. I saw heroic killing blows just go unanswered multiple times. Combats. What did I see? Oh my god, it was a great game. Richie was playing against I think Max with his Chaos, his Warriors of Chaos, and Max had got 2 Manticore kind of characters, a bunch of knights, a huge brick of chosen, and Richie was just kind of move forward with his dwarfs, move forward a tiny bit, and then just the Chaos hit it, right? And then most of his lions fell back in good order, or they didn't fall back in good order. Sorry, they gave ground, so 2 inches, and then they're both measuring. They're like, okay, a turn and a half, and I'm giving ground off the board. Okay, because dwarfs didn't get very far forward, right?
Right.
So then I went away, looked around the room, see what else was happening. Came back half an hour later, and then the dwarfs are at the mid board. I'm like, what's happening? He's like, yeah, they just started losing and started running away.
Turn it around, man.
He's like, I can't catch them, but they go backwards now. And I was like, it was amazing to see, people charging and then ending up in losing positions because the game is very minimal on dice. And that RNG is going to that. Yes, I'm going to play myself. I'm going to do all the movement right. I'm going to move everything around. I'm going to compare it now to the priority roll in Age of Sigmar, which Old World fans, I know you don't think it's a good thing. You're absolutely wrong. It's a great thing, and it's a great thing because the same positive I have about the Old World in that I'm going to do absolutely everything right in the game. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to work out the math. I'm going to do this risk management. But because you're rolling so few dice, sometimes, like, you've got 5 attacks hitting on 3s, you comfortably, you might expect you'll hit on 3, but you might just miss 3 times, and that's that difference. Then you roll a 1 to wound. That's that difference in that whole combat res you've been working towards, maybe for the whole game, and it's going to come up.
And so there's two quick now. Actually, I have 2 quick points and then an example that I'd love to share.
Please do.
One is that not only does the limited dice pools, and any Blood Bowl player would know this, intimately knows this. It's not as extreme as Blood Bowl, but Blood Bowl pivots on essentially everything is a D6 roll, right? So and most of the time you're getting 1, 2, or 3 D6 roll results. It's not a lot to hang your hat on, right? So you really if you want to talk about a game of risk management, Blood Bowl is all about that. What order of operations do you go in? The best players are able to manage dice failure. That's what they do. But the cool thing too, I think, if we want to put the shoe on the other foot, is that not only are the sure bets not as sure. So when you go in to do something with your tuned up guy who should just roll something, and they can fall on their face and do nothing. The inverse is true as well. You can have these moments where something outperforms unexpectedly and brings you back. And from just there are two actual on table examples of specifically post combat fallback scenarios that really changed the shape of 2 different games. And one of them I felt very good. It was a loss. It was a 14-6 loss against one of the Triple Crown Wargaming guys who were out in full force, looking sharp boys.
They got a YouTube channel. Go check it out.
Yeah, they're doing good work out there. One was playing a Tomb King's list that had a lot of toughness 6 in it, had a whatever their skeleton giant is, a Necrosphinx, and of course the Bone Dragon with reroll wounds armor and the Flail of Skulls. And so I was approaching that line of very scary toughness 6 monsters, and I do not have the tools to deal with all 3 at the same time. So my head is I've got to control at least 2 of them and kill another. And essentially I used Crystal Column to block 1 and create 2 lanes that I filled with fanatics. And my hope was actually at that moment that he actually didn't engage at all. And that he would not charge me and let me then have another chance to Miasmic Mirage 1 and control another with a Crystal Column, basically really give me a chance to lock it down. But he realizes that T6 versus a fanatic that and toughness 6 specifically that rerolls all wounds it suffers, very strong, was probably a good bet to get into combat. And so he charged into a unit of my goblins, maybe took a wound from 3 different fanatics hitting it. That was rough. But once he got in there, I realized that because he charged past me, basically there was a Black Orc unit here and the Goblin unit was here, that when this Goblin unit fell back, now I've got a Mangler on one side, I've got the Black Orcs on the other, I can charge into his flanks, and now maybe I can combat res this Bone Dragon to death. And I'm thinking, woo, this might be it. I might have won the game. This is really good. I think I got him. And what happened was those goblins fell back so far that now the Black Orcs were out of the flank, and I was not able to catch the Bone Dragon. And I would say, to my credit, I realized that, oh shit, now I'm playing get as many points as I can. And the rest of the game was about me keeping my characters alive, denying him points, and it was 2 or 3 more turns from there. And I actually came away from that loss really proud. My head was way up. I was facing a list that I wasn't sure I could handle at all. To come away from it, in a situation where and there was another situation where if some goblins had held, and not been chased down, I probably draw it, which would have been unfair. That would have been dumb if I actually drew the game. But I was able to make good calls to preserve the points that I had gotten and get a 6, 14-6. So I got 6 points. I was really, really happy with that outcome. Fast forward to the next day, Rob. Next day, and I had some bad rolls, but again, I dealt with the rolls, reacted well on the table. Next day, I'm playing Darren with his chaos, and I will just describe two scenarios in this particular game where the RNG was brutal to me. One of which was he left his Demon Prince sort of out on a flank because he loved to get them around and do Pillars of Fire spells.
Yeah, I'll talk about the list from the others in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a cool piece of tech. I was like, no, that's cute. It wasn't cute. It was actually quite deadly. But I was able to get his Demon Prince into combat with my Black Orc, and then coming down the flank, he had just this sort of annoying random unit of 4 Chaos Knights that he just used to harass and be annoying. And I was like, I'll kill those with some Wind Blast. Wind Blast, of course, pushes you back 2 inches. But I managed to kill 2 of them. They failed their panic check, and they fell back in good order so far back that now they were able to charge into the combat with my Black Orc. And because they had a champion, they were then able to challenge the Black Orc, which meant it took 3 turns of combat or 4 turns of combat to kill the Demon Prince rather than 1 or 2 turns. And that was only because that was actually a situation where a good result happened for me. I killed 2. They panicked. They fell back, but then reformed and didn't go off the table anyway. So that was like a real kick in the junk. But later on, I miscast twice in a row and killed my own on defense. Miscast twice in a row. Dispelling. I was outclassed in the arts 2 times in a row, removing the final 2 wounds from my Wyvern caster. And that was just...
Who's your general?
Who was not my general, by the way. Was not my general.
Still hilarious. It was your level 4 on a Wyvern.
Yes.
Right.
And a key piece. Yeah.
Yeah, you dispelled
and again,
twice.
one that if I can just keep alive, it's a lot of points denial, right? So it's not a great thing to just give away.
He's trying to do magic missiles at you, and you're dispelling and killing yourself.
And I killed myself. And also, I will say, who had suffered in the first turn. He suffered a barrage of, I think it was Fireball.
Yeah, Fireball.
Anyway, it needed 6s to wound him. It couldn't have been Fireball because he wasn't giving me a save. Something rolled a fuck ton of dice against him. Anyway, he got 6 wounds on 6s. So he rolled maybe some amount of dice, and he got 6 6s, of which I saved a paltry amount. So he was wounded because of already a spiky, unlikely roll, and then he died to ludicrously low odds. So like that stings. But hopefully I was more funny than actually annoyingly pissed about it. But it was a wild game.
Sounded like you were having fun. I think that actually mirrors a conversation. Like the reliability, I think it's a good conversation to have about like the meta, kind of moving on to the list that we saw and what we saw happening.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But I think, there's some really good, reliable points where that RNG moves away. If you start having toughness 6 and higher, and you have a lot of that in your army, like one of the lists we saw was like 2 Bone Dragons and 2, I think Necrosphinxes. Were they Necrosphinxes or the other ones? 2 Necrosphinxes. And you're like, okay, cool. That's just a lot of wounds and a lot of toughness. We saw a Double Dragon, High Elf list as well. Again, that's just a lot of high toughness. With really great saves, where again Games Workshop in every single game system that they've ever made for the history of time, and they'll do it in new Age of Sigmar, they'll do it in the next version of 40k. They do not understand scalability on abilities. They're like, we'll give you a 5-up ward on your 3 wound character. You'll be like, but by the way, I can stick this also on a plus 5 wound dragon or whatever, and they just don't get it. And so obviously there's some real problematic items out there, which I would like to see the items looked at, like just given some points cost for if you equip it while, on a dragon versus if you equip it while on foot,
Or you can limit who can take certain items, and you see that on a bunch of different items like that. Like I know in the new Arcane Journal, for example, for Black Orcs, there's a really cool piece of armor that is for cavalry, guys on chariots or on foot, but you can't take it on the Black Orc on the Wyvern for a very good reason, right? So like I think they can start to look at places where they might want to limit that, because I think where sometimes they overtune things and miss specifically in big ways, I think just in general game design for Games Workshop is on defense. So we don't have 2-up rerollable ward saves, right? Which is something that existed in the past. But we do have, because the relative damage output is still fairly low, we do have some quite invulnerable monsters. And so toughness 6 on its own, I think even if you remove a lot of the layered armor saves and stuff,
that's kind of
toughness 6 is still hard to deal with, right? It's still going to be strong.
Especially when you overload it, which is kind of some of the things, especially with the Tomb Kings we saw at the weekend. And obviously this is just 24 players. I've got another 24-player event coming this weekend, so I'll have even more information to kind of put that like next week. I'll be able to bring you even more conversations. But that kind of felt like that was something that was definitely an issue and something that people needed to like think through on the tabletop. That said, though, and while some of them, like, we had dragons do well, like, so Hugo had dragons on the submarine in second place. We had like a fairly unconventional Warriors of Chaos list do the best.
I don't think it's fair to say Hugo submarined.
He lost his first game.
He did, but I mean, he was on the surface all the way from there. I don't know.
That's what it literally is. He submarined. Okay, lost the first game, crushed 4 times. Okay, shout out to you, Hugo. Right. That's what that means.
All right.
Not that they were like anyway. And then in our third place was, now I was rooting for Jack a lot. Jack was playing Beasts of Chaos, and I have said, and I will continue to say, I think Orcs and Goblins is also another good example of it, but I would say that there's a real high skill cap available to some armies. I think Orcs and Goblins have it. I think Beasts of Chaos really do have it. I think there's some real like, and then what happens with these overriding like toughness 6 armies, they're very kind of on the nose. They're like, this is coming at you. And then if you're able to kind of work around that, feed some stuff, I would say though, like, it's probably in more of your casual games. So if you are out there watching this and you're like, actually, I'm just playing down the club and stuff, you could reduce how much toughness 6 stuff you've like, you don't need to do double Bone Dragon. You don't need to have Bone Dragon, 2 Necrosphinxes sort of situation. You can
or 2 Bone Dragons, 2 Necrosphinxes, as one player did, who did not. I mean, he did well, but he didn't podium.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't podium, and I think that's something to be conscious of. So that's kind of my first kind of like early. Again, it's still really early, but my early meta conversation is toughness. Like that would be like a great title for a video. Toughness 6. What do you do? That's that's a great start of a conversation out there. I think that's kind of interesting. The other conversation I would have is I think Magic is really strong, as we saw from Darren's list, where Darren very smartly had a bunch of casters. He had level 4 Demon Prince, another level 4 and a level 2, but thanks to the bonuses, his Demon Prince is casting at level 6, his other casters casting at level 6 as well, and then his level 2 is casting at like level 4, and that's because of a Tzeentch ability and also an item that you can take in Chaos as well.
Which makes dispelling off the hop really difficult,
right?
Yeah. So like if you're looking for tech in your equipment, I would say on your casters, depending on which way you're leaning, like see what kind of access you have to bonuses to dispel. Because you're gonna want, there's gonna be scenarios where you definitely want to get the dispel off, and a lot of the times, like especially in that game, like my dice were abandoned me against Darren. But he was rolling very consistently, 9, 8, even 7 when you have plus 6 to cast. I need boxcars to stop that, right? So like, yeah, I think Magic defense. I think we've been saying that for a while on this show. Is of great importance. What to do about toughness 6? I think those are the 2 sort of linchpins. Sort of if there's a stat check in Old World that you need to be able to answer, it's going to be even more so once trolls show up. You need to be able to answer, what are you doing about Magic and toughness 6?
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of so I would say toughness 6 conversation to have in the future. Also, Magic. If you do see a lot of Magic, and I'll talk about Darren's list in a moment, some of the other lists as well. What are you going to do about that? And I think also like arcs. I think that's really fascinating. There's a really good conversation there, something to really think about, like actually where you can dispel from. Example, we'll talk about Darren's list for a moment because it was like the kind of Magic Dom list, as well as obviously, like we said there, he just rolled into the same spell lore all the time because he was looking to get the double Flame Pillar. So he's looking to get Flame Pillar from Battle Magic, and he was also looking to get Fireball. And that way he's getting a great Magic Missile 3 times across 3 casters. And
in addition to the Tzeentch signature spell, which is Tzeentch's Fireball. Anyway.
Yeah, which is another magic missile. So potentially
good one.
up to 6 magic missiles.
Yes.
And then in addition, across 3 casters, in addition, then he's also getting the pillars and using those because they're some of the I think maybe the only vortex you could control. And then the way that they pop through characters. Not pop through characters, sorry, pop through units. You've got a very real opportunity to kind of old school Purple Sun stuff, although it's not the same.
Yeah.
You roll into wound, you get saves against it.
It's only strength 3. Yeah.
Yeah, although he only found out in the very final game, which I thought was very fun, that you need to be within range of the casters to dispel the vortices. Which we talked about in the Magic video. If you're like, oh, Magic sounds interesting, go back and watch the Magic video. You'll see some hot takes, but you'll also hear some good info. And one of the things that in the very final game, I was like, you have to be in range of the caster, and he was like, oh, I didn't know that all weekend. And I was like, so that list was more effective.
Yes.
And I think kind of that RNG factor as well. It's interesting. But again, if he said I didn't make a single miscast all weekend, or very few miscasts. I think that list could have gone very wrong very quick.
It could, or if I immediately think of, if I'm a Bretonian, I'm putting Elise Duchard in every list. She dispels automatically on doubles, and also deals a wound to whoever cast it. Like, that is crazy. Like, that alone, that alone will put a lid, because there's a lot of Bretonians, and she's not out, but she could be anybody.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah.
Like that alone to me could very much, from a I want to win a GT perspective. Like, if I'm doing what Darren did, leaning everything into Magic in a very smart way, Elise Duchard single-handedly kills my army, just on doubles throughout the course of that game, right? So that kind of a counter would be really, really, really strong, and I highly recommend everyone to look into that model, because there's a lot of Bretonian players out there. We had a lot of Bretonians, had a lot of Tomb Kings. Also, I think it is important to raise a point, which is a little while back I got keyed on to the idea that if a model is unable to take a particular kind of magic armor, let's say shields, that you're not allowed to then equip it on a model that can take magic items. And so one I'd say not insignificant thing that he was doing, and it was just smart unfortunately he didn't read the full how to do it, was that he was putting shields on his Dragon Ogres so that they went from a 3 up to a 2 up, which made them much more resilient, using, I think, the cheapest magic shield. It's like Enchanted Shield or something like that. So that's something he couldn't have. Charm Shield, one of the two. So the actual effect of the item wasn't that big. I actually said it out loud during this game. Why the hell did you give all these Dragon Ogres a 5-point, 10-point weapon? That seems dumb. But it was so that it got to a 2-up, and then maybe he makes the 6-up ward or the one save or whatever it is. But he wasn't actually able to do that. So yes, Darren's list was illegal. I lost to Darren spectacularly. I am so okay with the fact that there was a list error. Ideally these things stop happening. We saw two, the winning list. I think maybe the winning list out of Sweden. Also, missed also a list error on the general. Both of the list errors were list errors, I am certain. But they did have consequential impacts on the games. But this is just going to happen, so I don't want anyone to get pilloried or attacked or anything for a little while here while we sort all this shit out. However, it did make me realize, because I was poo-pooing the idea that it'd be restricted at all, because there are these common magic items now, and because so many more models in the game have access to magic items.
Champions.
It is an important balancing thing, I think, that was definitely considered in the game, that you need to at least be able to take a shield to have a shield. And Dragon Ogres are a good example why. And then beyond that, the more finite one is do you need to be able to take plate armor in order to take magical plate armor? I think that's something that we'll find out in the FAQ, if it's even more detailed than even just you must be able to take armor. So we'll see how that one unfolds. But I think fundamentally, I get it now, and I hope Darren is resting easy, because he played his list well. The list fundamentally was awesome, and yeah, I had a great game against him despite wanting to kill myself.
Well,
actually, successfully killing my model. In fact, at least once.
I think it's important to note with this, and as the TO myself, because there's a couple of calls I made, especially with that list. I made a call about vortices, which some people have disagreed with, some people like, but the situation is still the same. This is so early. My briefing at the beginning of the GT was, if there is a rules question that you're going to bring to me, and if there are two conclusions, I will choose the worst possible interpretation of that. Not because I want to just be a dick, but because if I always choose the worst, I've got to make a call, and if I choose the worst interpretation of it, then what I'm doing is I'm not setting you up for disappointment in the future if official FAQs come out or something like that. Which is my long-term process. Like, obviously, I've been covering Games Workshop games now for 8 years. What I've always done when I've played at tournaments myself, and I have played pretty high level quite often, or I'm doing coverage, or I'm doing videos on the internet, I've always said I played the worst version of it. That way, two things will happen. If you get vindicated, it's the good way, then you've got an immediate power bump in your army, which is excellent. And also, no one will ever get salty with you in any situation, which I think is good. So that's the way I always play it. So I think that's fun.
And undoubtedly, even once this FAQ comes, although it has taken a long time to come, so maybe they've added, I heard about it in February that they were doing it, and that no more questions. And now we're in April, so maybe they were continuing to chew on some things. I don't know. But in the particular case, I'm just going to talk about it because it is interesting. The particular case Rob's talking about is whether or not one vortice can land on top of another vortex. So share the same space, because it came up in one of my games, and independently we looked at the rules and determined that yes, they can. So I had, for example, there was the necromancy negative leadership buff spell was on the table.
Hey, that's spell.
And I wanted to put a crystal column on it, because I needed the same space, or at least they would overlap. And so we looked at it, and when I looked at the rules there was nothing. Absolutely nothing explicit about what happens when a vortex touches another vortex. All it refers to is other units.
Yeah.
So in my case, we ruled that, the crystal column could go down. In the inverse of that, because I think it also talks about vortexes and terrain, it talks about not being able to be placed on impassable terrain. So the inverse wouldn't necessarily work. But anyway, that's how we ruled ours. In your case, what we're talking about is, if there was already a pillar of fire in the way, what happens when you get to it? And if the pillar of fire is a unit, then it would pop through and it would keep going. And if the pillar of fire is, a token on the table, they could share the same space, and you don't get the benefit of it sort of jump skipping. I think sharing the same space in that case feels about right. But we'll have to see if GW tells us more about how vortexes interact.
I'd love that. I'd love also people to know you need to be near the cast to dispel them. That would be a great start.
Yes.
And again on that, we
have been talking about that literally since the almanac came out about them. Because it's the coolest interaction, I think, on vortices. Because they are tough. It remains in play in general. It's really tough to keep on the table, especially if you're up against any form of caster, right? So because they can be easily dispelled. You only have to meet the casting value. So and it's very hard to drop a vortex and then get out of range, because you do it in the shooting phase. So generally speaking, you are where you are. And then the other player, if they're in dispel range, when you drop the vortex, they're usually pretty short range, means they're going to have a really good chance to dispel it before it really does much. So the fact that you could move away and keep it in play is kind of a neat thing. So anyway.
And very, very, very strong. We had Dark Elves came second. Hugo kicking ass with a big dragon in his list. And then, like I say, we had Beast of Chaos in third. That was kind of but we had a bunch of players. And honestly, several of those games could have just gone slightly different way. Shout out to Jack, who was playing Watchtower. It's not called Watchtower now, but the one where there's a piece of terrain in the middle. And was playing a great game up against two kings and was just losing models left, right, and center. And then just at the very end, turn 6 was wait, I'm just gonna hold the Watchtower, and won the game on that moment, which was really fun. So the missions coming into effect. Just so everyone's clear, what I did at the event as well. I also give me some feedback on this, but I just made 3 of the 5 missions be open battle. and then I only chose 2 different missions. So I chose Watchtower, which is the one where you contest in the middle, and I also chose the Battle for the Pass, which is one where you play long ways as well. And that way, I felt like I really reduced down how much brain power people had to put into like the scenario in addition. And there's an example of like the scenario was slightly different and someone like lost at the end. And then I think that was a really nice way to do it. Like I didn't want to do all 5 open battles, but I easily could, because I expect probably 99 to 100% of the games were not played correctly over the weekend. Some sort of rule aberration, even if people weren't aware of them. Like something was wrong, misplayed, because that just happens this early into a complex game. Because that's
and I would say when you're early in any edition, you're gonna get that, and you need a pretty advanced meta to like have like a not like the preponderance of like mastery to like not be as obsessed with like to be, I guess, legitimately obsessed with perfection and getting all the rules right. But even in games that do exist and have existed for, an edition that has been played for a while, you get misplays all the time just because. And that's part of the game. It's part of sports, guys. Like very big fucking deals out there are like referees who are like as learned in their game as possible, whose only job is to call a game correctly. They screw it up all the time, getting in situations worth millions of pounds. So like in general, I think the bugaboo around getting things wrong. Yes, there are people who will, angle shoot and figure out what and they will
deal with that later.
They'll do that. Deal with it later. I don't think that there's enough. I honestly, right now, if you're out there crushing by abusing rules and lying to your opponents and winning the one-dayers and still awesome 24-person GT on the weekend at Squarebase at the TSN Arena. Just good job, pal. Way to be a real winner.
Well, I mean, I would actively, as I've said, I was telling you, we had an Age of Sigmar event a few weeks ago. Someone got five ones, which is like the worst score you can get, and all personally came to complain about the player. So I just emailed them. This is an Age of Sigmar event like a couple of weeks ago, not the Squarebase GT, and I just emailed the guy. I was like, hey, I see you bought tickets to Future. I don't want you to come back to the venue. Thank you very much. Like, that's that simple. Like, it's really easy to create a great space. Anyway, the event, just a quick TLDR about the event with 24 players. The meta, we do have some stats. So just talk about this.
Actually, before, there was, I went off on a tangent, but just on the missions things, because we did talk about missions a lot. We picked the missions we did too, because they're the least pre-game RNG-y of all of them. Like, the other, there's maybe one more that adds some complexity that isn't just bullshit. I think it's essentially the equivalent of the Banners mission from the old 8th edition games. I think could be a reasonable add. But that one I think definitely fit into the model of what you said, which is like, oh, we forgot we were playing Banners this whole time, or like, we forgot a pretty essential rule. So I think there's maybe one or two that can be added. I think there's a lot of really great scope to maybe add some secondaries or tertiary objectives that are maybe end of game or whatever to spice things. But unneeded right now. I think the game is so much fun, even with the 3 missions or just the 1 mission, like you said, open battle, straight kill points. I think it works. I think it works just fine. The story and the game state is driven, and the objective of winning is driven by the terrain on the table, which again, great system so far for determining the terrain and setting up the table, and the opponent that is presented against you. There's lots of meat on that bone. I think we don't need to. By all means, people out there, if you want to snowflake some missions and do things that are different, you want objective play, whatever you want to do, go nuts. But I think for me personally, and I'm sure you at the arena in the events that you're running, the prolific amount of events that you're running, I think what we've got work just fine.
Again, as a TO walking around the tables, okay. I have watched people who are professional, like the Triple Crown guys, love them. I think they're great. They just went straight from Warhammer Fantasy Battle into the old world. A bunch of other people. These are people who are excited, serious. Hugo, another good example, played 9th Age aggressively, traveled from Spain. Promise you, even at that level, those people, you're making mistakes, okay? Yep. It's this early. So please don't listen to people on Facebook. Please don't listen to people like... all over the internet who are like, this is right, this is wrong. They're too hyperbolic right now about a game where you haven't just put models on the table. Just go to an event. Doesn't have to be
Go
one of my
play.
events. Go play. Go play at your local
Go
store.
play.
Put it down. Work it out. Have fun. The only reason I was saying, like, consider Magic. Maybe think about some anti-Magic. Think about how to deal with Toughness 6. Just because then you'll end up with a slightly nicer game. If you're playing with your friends, don't take 5 dragons. Or obviously 5 is hyperbolic, but you know what I mean. Take some stuff, think stuff through. There's a real great game and conversation I'd like to have about the metagame right now about micro actions, MSU, loads of good stuff. We'll try and cover that more in the future. But right now, just have a great time. Just have a great time. Right? So, stats from the weekend. And because that's what was the overwhelming feedback, I think, from the weekend, irregardless of the venue and my hosting of the event, the actual game was fun. I saw people play 5 fun games. And that's pretty key. They walked away from 5 fun games. So
like five fun, hard fought games, and like the vibe in that. And I felt this at the 8th edition Squarebase GT, the first one that I threw here in November. The vibe in the room was just so good. Like it's very rare, and I think it helps that there was a lot of past history with the people there. There were groups of friends and people that we knew and all that stuff. But like, the vibe was so good. Like, people are so excited to be playing this game again. You know, it is a long lost love for a lot of people. And so yeah, if you're on the sidelines, if you're the type of person who's like reading all the consternation that's going on online, people really nitpicking rules and interactions and all this nonsense. To be quite frank, like, even if you let them have their ridiculous interaction, it's probably not gonna fucking change much in the course of a game. And just go out and play. Like, just go out with your friends, go to an event, get out there, get some reps in, see what's up. Definitely don't maybe bring a level 4 caster. Definitely bring a level 4 caster. All lists start with a level 4 caster, full stop, period. If you're dwarves, it's a fucking anvil. That is a hard rule if you're playing with strangers, I think. Well, and then maybe something toughness 6 or how to deal with toughness 6. But like, that's basically it. As long as you bring the level 4 caster, you're gonna have you're at least gonna play. You know, you're not just gonna get blown off the table, which is fun.
I stayed up till 1 last night writing lists after the weekend. My new army doesn't have. It's almost completely multiple small units. Not like nothing with a rank, which we could talk about in the future. So anyway, we got some stats. Some hot stats that we're going to be covering now, I think, which is cool from stuff at the weekend. And then there was one other thing as well that we did over the weekend. So if you won a game, you won, but you had to beat someone by 100 points. By 100 points in order to win the game, which I thought was very fair. Some of this stuff I'm still, literally just putting in the wild, see how it plays. 100 points worked really, really well. Loved it. So I think I'll maintain that. You got to beat someone by 100. That seemed fair. The other thing was we did this thing called a differential. So for every 100 points you beat someone by, after that, you would change from a draw would be 10 points each, so 10 tournament points. All right, so you would draw on victory points, which is stuff that you kill, 10-10, and then you go like 11-9, 12-8, 13-7, as you kept killing stuff, and you would end up. However, generally, so we got some stats on this, 60% of our matches were 20-0s. So that was, in my opinion, not enough of a variance. So I'm going to keep for this weekend's upcoming GT, there will be 100-point differential on kill points for the win. Then everything after that will be 200 points. Shout out to Toby, who A, is just a great human being, but B,
great guy.
Great guy. Love Toby. Toby's helped me with loads of this information and some of this stuff, which I'll be posting all in our Discord, our Patreon, and some other stuff later today. Some really good information. And we're going to change it to the 200-point differential. We looked at it, changing it to 150, which is what I think the Triple Crown guys are doing at a later event. Again, go check out their YouTube, please. But we even pushed it to 175, and that wasn't enough. So I've actually bumped up to 200. And if we take this weekend's results and the variance of 200 points, then only 22% of the matches became a 20-0, and that feels a lot better. It's not really important for anyone other than tournament organizers probably, but players, that's going to be useful for you as well. So you got to beat someone by 2,000 points to get the big 20-0.
That's literally like you're not losing anything or very little and killing everything of your opponent is a 20-0. That feels right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the 100-point variance is about right. I think maybe I have more of a conversation around that this weekend. So that's what I'm going to zero in on this weekend and be like, so your game finished like this. How did you feel about that 100 points? But very few of those games were like that. Then we got like kill points, average differential, and some other stats that we've seen that have gone on here. But just so you know who we did have at the weekend, we had a ton of Bretonnian players. We had a ton of Tomb Kings players. I don't think this stat is right here, so I'm not going to change it up. But yeah, we have some good data which we're going to post online. I'm not going to go through that right now. Because I don't think it's really super necessary. The other
the split the breakdown of the armies?
Yes, because I don't have the graphic correctly. That's why.
Oh, okay. Well, I remember off the top of my head a couple standouts. One was 4 Tomb Kings out of 24 totally there. I think 3 at least Bretonnians. But my biggest takeaway from this, and I am really curious to see how this plays out, was how few Renegade factions showed up. We had what do we have? We had
Dark Elves, Vampire Counts, and Chaos Dwarfs, which I love to see.
And so that's a great three pack. But definitely not, as far as a percentage of the amount of armies out of all of them that are Renegades. It was interesting. And again, it's a very small sample, it's one event, whatever. But certainly you're seeing huge influence from what the initial released armies were, which is Tomb Kings and Bretonnia, as like being very popular. Helps that at least Tomb Kings are very good. And Bretonnia, I don't know enough about. But yeah, I found that to be very interesting.
Let's not do this. Let's not just be like Warriors of Chaos are the best because they won an event and then only 3 Renegades turned up, so that no one's taken them. We'll see. I think
it's not a trend. It's not a trend, but it is something to keep an eye on. And I'm curious to go look at other events and see, is this an outlier, or is the great conspiracy against Renegades actually kind of working?
No, I think Tomb Kings and Bretts are going to be the most popular because they're available to buy, right?
Yes.
And then I think Warriors will be like the next most popular because again they're available to buy. Effectively, you just buy the Slaves to Darkness stuff.
And super popular too. Period. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And Beasts of Chaos also might end up. Beastmen Brayherds. Might also end up that way as well. We'll see. We will have to see. Like lots of events coming up to take this information in. So differentials, stats is all done, and we've had that. Well, we've talked about some of the lists that did well, which is cool. Shout out to so we did best general, although that didn't get like the best prize. We did best sports, which was absolutely lovely. Shout out to Josh, he did great, and we did coolest army, which was and we've got some pictures which are on the TSN Arena Twitter thread. Which you can see here, where I took photos of every army. But I'm also going to put those in a blog post, which I'll host on thehonestwargamer.com. So I'm going to do that later today. So you can go, if you like, want to go look, because people are this popped off on Twitter, which is a dying platform, so no one's on there anymore. But like, people were super excited to see all the armies out for coolest army, and that was won by Rory. With his which I was kind of surprised by. My favorite army, I'm just gonna call it now. My favorite army was played by Tom, which was dwarfs, but it was super clean. Like it was wasn't really showy, but it was just clean and neat. I really liked it. I thought it was really fun. What was your favorite army at the event?
Well, I played Rory, so that's sticking in my head. My favorite army at the event, I mean, I really liked the look of the double Bone Dragon, double Necrosphinx. I think it was mostly dry brush, to be honest. I didn't look super close at it, but I thought it looked quite effective.
So that was this one.
If I'm being real here, people brought good looking shit. Like I probably had the least finished army on any of the tables, to be honest with you. Like they looked good. Like at no point was I thinking that these are bad armies to play against. Like everyone's brought some heat. It was good.
Yeah, that would actually be my feedback as well. The hobby level was actually really high for like a game that's just come out. So
and not like I've had this on my shelf for 10 years and just brought it out. Like there were a couple like that, but like for the most part, these are things people have put together real quick.
That would actually be my if I wanted to like do a quick TLDR about why you should get into the old world. Like, there being a complex rule state and other stuff beside, my quick thought on this subject is that I actually think the model count is very low, especially if you end up taking, a level 4 wizard, a BSB, and some sort of lord on a monster. immediately lots of, maybe up to 50% of your army is condensed into just the smallest little set of units. So I think the model count was very low, which was actually quite exciting, and the model count was very varied.
And I think that's also, I know people may not like it, but that's also why a T6 meta isn't necessarily the worst thing in the beginning. It lets people get a very playable army out pretty quick. Without having to paint a ton of stuff. Even my army list, 1,000 points of it was 4 characters, right? So yes, the other 1,000 points because it's Orcs and Goblins was 90 models. No, not even 80 models. Yeah, but that's Orcs and Goblins. That's really amazing. An Orc and Goblin list in 8th edition could literally be 400 models plus. So that's a massive improvement. And also the game plays super well, I feel, at this 2,000 points. I know a lot of the old heads are pushing to raise points levels and get them up, but that's going to increase barrier to entry. That's going to slow games down, and that those very old heads are also looking to limit toughness 6 in monsters. So all you're going to do is you're going to make this a harder game to access for people who are keen to get into it. You're going to restrict people from bringing the coolest models. F that. 2,000 points. Let T6 fall where it may. I think they'll reduce the power of some of the defense, and you'll get just awesome stuff. And if you want to have a horde of shit, you totally could too. You can lean into that in another direction. But right now, it feels like something that's achievable, which is something that you can't say about previous editions.
Yeah, I saw that with Rebecca with her just horde of skeleton warriors. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is so many models. When I went, that actually shout out to Rebecca for that, because she was playing vampire counts. So I went downstairs, looked at her army, which is where it's set up, and then I came back up and I was like, the rest of the armies are much less model-wise, which I thought was really, really positive. So barrier to entry really low. This is Rory's army, just quickly for everyone on YouTube. Podcast guys can't listen, but one coolest army with all the big red and stuff. So I thought that was super fun as well. And he's just a lovely bloke.
Red Tomb Kings again, taking the what is normally did you go with beige skeletons or white skeletons? And painting them red. So cool. I love it when people just go completely abstract like that and make something that looks amazing on the table.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was the Cetra style list as well. So he was rolling unprotected. He had a 1 level 1 caster. That was tricky.
That was very tricky. Also, and then our best overall was Richie, who had his lovely, I'm just going to show it on the screen now. He had his lovely...
Grilled the competition.
Yeah, he's grilled the competition. His Highland Miniatures Dwarfs. But we did a best overall, which is not something generally gets done something that tends to get done a lot in the UK. But that was a combination of your generalmanship, your sports, your paint, and also we collected a bunch of secondary information. How many toughness 6 monsters did you kill? How many banners did you slay? How many generals did you kill? How many miscasts did you get? And we gave out some terrible trophies for that. And then me and Val worked on the most Statler and Waldorf award at the end, which was because he got George Foreman, which the TSN Arena now, this is a TSN Arena thing. We give away home appliances as top prizes, and
pretty good. People got to eat.
People got to eat. Last time it was a rice cooker. This time it's a George Foreman. What will be this weekend? Are we going up to an air fryer? We're not sure
yet.
I'm
pushing for the air fryer, people. I'm just so you know, I'm lobbying for the air fryer. I know that's an appliance a lot of people would like to have. So maybe old Val's influence will get the quality, the meme appliance of not the 1990s, but of the late 2010s.
Well, the air fryer is hot right now.
Instantly hot.
The problem is you're not a TikTok guy. If you're a TikTok, and for all the people watching this show, if any of your partners, I'm assuming most of you are dudes, but some of them I'm sure you're ladies. If you have a partner, go around to them and say, "I was thinking of getting a Ninja air fryer." Let me tell you, if they're a TikTok lady, that's popping off. They'll be like, "Really? I didn't know you loved me. Right? It's the hot thing. I think also the Ninja ice cream maker is also currently the thing.
You have my attention.
Yeah,
you have my attention. I've ice cream making at home. Get out of here. What kind of a utopia are we living in that you can just make ice cream at home? I gotta walk to the store. It's nonsense.
So I think to wrap up the results from this weekend, I think everyone had a good time, which is, I think, well, I hope at least. Then we got some good games in, good results. We got some good feedback on what the game might look like, which maybe we can condense into like a more like appetizable kind of like thought. But I'd like to see what happens this weekend, kind of like take some more info in and look at that. Have you got any kind of like takeaways from the weekend about like the game state, the meta-wise?
Yeah, I think I touched on it. I think it's a tremendously playable game. I think it provides all sorts of interaction and emotional ups and downs. It's incredibly satisfying to play. I like fully tabled 3 opponents, and we played to the very end in each and one of them, and I didn't feel like they were particularly mad at me. Like it was great. I got wrecked, in one game and like snatched a good feeling loss out of another. Each one was, a fun experience, I felt. And it sure felt like no one was leaving there pissed. Everyone hung out for the awards. There was great camaraderie. And also
Teddy Bear floats on Saturday night.
Teddy Bear floats on Saturday night. Now, obviously, the Triple Crown guys, they did big time us to go to Hooters, so they didn't get to have Teddy Bear floats. But to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah.
But in general, it was wonderful, and I cannot stress this enough, folks, that Robert Symes is a caring nurturer. He is incredibly, despite what he sometimes will say under his breath about his place, about the TSN Arena. Maybe it doesn't meet the idealized version of his gaming space right now, but I tell you what, the tables are brilliant. It is a comfortable place to play. The terrain was fantastic. You care. There's drinks being served that are part of the package. It is a wonderful place to play a game of Warhammer, and you made that. And you also create an environment that's really, really, I felt, inclusive and welcoming for everyone who was there. Everyone was excited to be there, and they stayed excited. So I think you should be really proud of what the community you're building around the arena and the type of people who are coming to play, because it's really, really awesome.
Appreciate that. Thank you. It is like that. And also actually shout out to all the players that turned up this weekend, because actually it's really their energy, and we've already had some like returning players that came to the one dayer, which I thought was lovely. And then you can really see that. I mean, I very much doubt Nathan's coming over from Perth again anytime soon. But Hugo was already like, Hugo's in Spain. He was like, "Oh, when's the team tournament? I might come for that if I can get permission." I was like, "That's great." I feel really confident and comfortable that outside of the TSN Arena, although I do hope we see more people playing at our venue in the future. We've got lots more events booked in for you to come and play. I really hope that I see that kind of strength in the community go. And I think also, like, it's learning the vibes, right? Like, you were great. I really enjoyed it when you were losing, because you were just telling jokes and having fun. And this game is a game that when you lose really hard. Like, there's no pity points available. It's not like, don't worry though, you scored a battle tactic turn 5, or no, don't worry, you were able to draw that Maelstrom card in 40k and get like 3 points. No, when you start getting your dick kicked in Old World, you start getting your dick kicked in, and you just have
unless you remove your dick from the situation, you run the hell away, which is what I was trying to say.
I've never done that in my life.
I think that's your problem. Yes, you can continue to get your dick kicked in, but if whatever your gambit was, like, remember, you have the opportunity to say, this is a game of kill points. So I can also score points by not letting them score points. So you can go on defense. I will not accept this necessarily. Sometimes, obviously, you're just going to get fucking rolled. That, yes, is true. That's true in Warhammer. That's fantasy, baby. Like, you gotta roll with it. I think if there's one thing that, if you're gonna gut check yourself and you're going into an event, you're trying hard and you want to play well, just remember, like, and this is something I struggle with all the time, is like, you cannot get hung up on the outcome of dice rolls. I mean, you can, you're just gonna be miserable, right? Because, like, they're gonna go against you. You're gonna have low odds. Like, what is low odds? Which, by the way, isn't. If it can happen, it can happen. Like, that's going to happen. So, like, it is a test of yourself, of being able to say, all right, those just fucking ate shit real hard there. What can I do now? And often, sometimes at some point you got to know when to fold them and just play some defense and not let your opponent score. And I think as players get good, you're going to see also those win differentials come down, because that's what's going to start to happen.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think those win differentials will change. I think people learning where to get pick points up from. Everyone making sure that they've actually got a level 4 wizard in their army. Please,
Right?
Please, just take a level 4 wizard. And understand your dispel range as well. Just understand that. Yeah,
Yes.
like just do that, and then I think we potentially can start moving towards a really healthy, positive community in the future. Obviously, like that's the problem as well. Like the difference between online discourse and those people on the tabletop is pretty vast. So as people who literally generate online discourse because we're YouTubers, like podcasts and everything else, you really need to emphasize again how much fun and the right energy that people turned up with. And if there does happen to be people who turn up with the wrong energy, not that I saw that this weekend, just make sure you don't, you just don't keep them in the fold. Like, just, make sure that we maintain those positive people because they're great. It's really good.
Reinforce the positivity and also speak truth to negativity. And also, I really want to emphasize something here. This is wisdom, all right? This is full fucking wisdom that came from my dear friend Robert Symes many years ago. I think I was caught up in some sort of internet debate over something that was outside of my control, and he said something to the effect of, "Don't worry, they don't show up anyway." And that is like really true. The people who show up, especially to 2-day events, if you're nervous about tournaments, go to 2-day events only, because those are the people who say, I'm going to rearrange my life. I'm going to make sure, the kids are taken care of, which probably means they're not doing it all the time. This is an important weekend for them. They're there to get a good weekend in. It's not just like a pickup game, or it's not just something. It's something that it requires planning and foresight. 2-day events, I think, are a great filter for assholes.
Agreed.
To put it in succinct terms.
Because you can't be an asshole all Saturday, then go to a weird Chinese restaurant Saturday night. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and you spend just by virtue of what they are, you spend more time with people. Like it's harder to be, oddly, I feel anonymous at them. There's lots of reasons why I believe in the great filter of GTs, but also the people who are just sitting on the internet whining and bitching and moaning, they didn't fucking get a beautiful army painted to go to the event. They did, you know what I'm saying? They're just there to complain and think that everything is against them in this world. Look, there's a lot of shit in our lives that are way outside of our control. Okay, there's a lot of circumstances that we're born into, or that we have to deal with, or any number of things. Games are not necessarily one of them. It is in your control to have a good time. It is in your control to look at the snake eyes 2 in a row that you've just faced and just realize how ridiculous that is, and to have a good time. It is a place that is, for me, and it breaks my heart in a million pieces when it's not this for some people. For me, it is a tremendously safe place to try ideas and just be as good as I possibly can be as a person and on the table and all that kind of stuff. That sounds insane, but that is really what I do believe. This is a social game. You play with other people, and is always going to be a collaborative enterprise. Trust us. For the most part, vast majority of the people there are people who want to be there to have a good time, trying to win, trying to play this game as best they can with their best foot forward. So don't worry about haters. The place where the haters are in your pocket, in your head, living rent free all the time because they're on the internet. Most of those people, they don't invest the time. They don't invest their weekends. They don't get their armies painted. They just complain bitterly and look at all the reasons why the world is stopping them from enjoying Warhammer the way they wish they could enjoy it. Well, guess what? You can go to an event and you can enjoy yourself. So please do.
And my feedback from this weekend, if I have it, is that that's absolutely true for any game system, I would argue. But what's great about the old world, because that is an intrinsic element of what I would like to see from games, is the old world also creates those experiences, both the highs, because you should be emotionally invested in the highs, but also the crushing lows. But it does create those moments in ways which, as I've said, I will be like, absolutely, God damn, I hate this. I'll see you tomorrow. Right? Yes. And I honestly think that there's nothing better than the ability to recognize that the thing just happened is such bullshit that you can't wait to try and make it not happen again tomorrow. And that's a mechanical experience. So that's a huge positive. Congratulations to the rules writers. Sure, there's loads of things that need to be cleared up. There's loads of things that need to be discussed. But some decision points, less dice, more impactful dice, more failure points, which are just inconsistent, is a positive in game design, which when they fail, I definitely do point them out. But we should talk about the positives, and I think that's excellent. There's definitely discrepancies between monstrous infantry and cavalry versus regular infantry and cavalry, and points discrepancies and other stuff, which we could get into the nitty-gritty of later. But I would say overall, they've created an experience on the tabletop where the dice are going to tell a story that's indicative of what the units do. And I'm gonna love and hate that, and there's nothing more I want about something I'm passionate about than to both love and hate it.
Yes,
so it's a good point. Okay, are you gonna switch army now? You've played so many Orcs and Goblins games. Are you gonna switch it up? What are you gonna do?
Oh shit, Rob. Oh shit. I don't know.
Flip it. You then? Are you thinking about it?
Coming out of the event, the two armies I'm most intrigued by are Tomb Kings and Beastmen, certainly. I did happen to make a reckless purchasing decision. By the way, stay tuned for my eBay clear out to raise money to pay for the two armies I bought. I think one of those two probably would be my next angle of attack. I also have to admit to the fact that both of the Arcane Journal, Army of Infamy, Orcs and Goblins options super appealing to try and play. So maybe I don't leave the Greenskins just yet. I don't know. Yeah, I'm torn. But also I have supped long and deep from the cup of Warhammer for about 2 months now. So maybe I'll just catch my breath a little bit too. I'll probably take my foot off the gas for a minute here. I'm also, by exposing myself to all of these armies, I'm a lot more open to just going to go read them, go see them, because I've seen them in action now, and it'll be interesting to read rules and understand why certain army choices are being made the way they are. The gates are sort of opening, I think, to being, instead of being just overwhelmed by all of the sort of equal opportunities, to now being okay, let's go look at some stuff in detail. So I think that's probably more where I'll go and start repping some stuff on Warhol. I'd love to get an online event going for our patrons as soon as possible. I know I've been saying this for weeks, but honestly, I've been quite distracted by this trip. So maybe we'll see in the next upcoming weeks. For those who can't make it out to TSN and you want to play with some like-minded people, we'll have our Patreon tournament kicking off hopefully soon.
I love that. That sounds great. Can't wait for that. I might try and get myself on there as well. Play some games.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to try and speed paint my army for the weekend in case I get to spare player. I do have a spare player, but what if there needs to be another spare player and I get to actually play? So jealous of this weekend. I was like,
dare to dream.
Someone has to be the person in charge, but why is it always
or
me?
Maybe you get. Maybe get a spare player who's actually the TL, and then you can.
I have had someone offer actually over the next for some in the future. For the early ones, I really want to make sure that the on-table experience is good, but also the infrastructure around it, because when we produce the infrastructure, the stats and stuff that we create as well, we also are going to.
There's lots of good reasons. Yeah.
But there's also we're also going to try and farm them out so other people can download them and use them. We're in the proto stages sorting that out, so tune in again or look for some updates in the future. But we're going to have just things you can just download and if you're running an all world event, you're like, I can track this information as well. This is fun. There's a printout Rob and Toby have made. That's great. So stuff
or maybe a Google Google form that you could, after the event, enter your information into. As simple as that, or maybe an app. So many cool things we can do.
But takeaways, great time. Val, it's been lovely to spend the week with you. It's been great chat. Thanks for listening, and also thanks to everyone who supports us on the Squarebase Patreon and is part of our Discord. And then thank you to everyone on YouTube who support as well. If you have had any games, events, or anything coming up, let us know. I would like to really work on a calendar. That's probably one of my very early jobs I'd like to organise, so people can know when there are other events around the world. Because I just want you to go play, so it's something that's on the list as well. We'll try and get that happening. So
in the meantime, though, I would suggest you can check out Best Coast Pairings. We'll have a lot of published events. Facebook has lots of published events. Even older systems like Tourney Keeper, and newer systems like newrecruit.eu. All of them will have, depending on what the organizer is using to run the event, Eventbrite, if you're a TSN. So there are places to go looking around. And if you don't have events in your community, but you do have some interested players, and you have maybe a local game store with some tables, perhaps you can be the change that you want to see in this world. This is an opportunity for people to step up and organize and get events going.
Yeah, and
if it's
sorry, carry on.
No, it's just if it's something that isn't being offered in your area, and you wish it was. Both Rob and I have been in that situation, and where we were the only ones who were motivated enough to go do something, and then you have the opportunity to give people a really great experience and be the person that lets people come together and share a great day or two playing a game that they love. So there's a lot. I mean, being a Warhammer TO isn't just all. There are some upsides and genuine benefits to it. So strongly consider being an organizer yourself if maybe if there's a bit of a vacuum where you are.
And if you need help with that, reach out to us, and we'll try to help you the best way we can.
100%.
Best way we can. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Stay square blessed. Stay square blazed. Blazed.
Square blast.
Square blazed.